Get ready to crush it. Crush it.
Yeah.
This is the Crush It Podcast with Matt and Mason.
We are back. Welcome to the Crush It Podcast. I am Matt Davis with my co-host, Mr. Mason Burchett. How you doing, man?
I am doing outstanding, Matt. Good to be back here with you.
Are you scared?
On this night.
You sound timid.
I was a little
Is it
nervous.
because you had cancer?
And you comforted me before the show and assured me everything would be okay.
Right.
So I really appreciate
the
it.
cancer's gone. You can.
Thank you.
You're good now.
Okay.
So we have a guest.
We do.
And we're really excited. This has been on the books for a while.
It's been on the books for a while. We always say that about every guest.
We have, but it's kind of cool because we've gotten to the point where we're actually scheduling people.
True.
And that's very cool.
And it feels very official.
It does. It does.
Sadly, they're not getting compensated for it. So we are excited to have the Emily Ward on the podcast. Emily, welcome to the Crush It Podcast.
Welcome.
Emily,
thanks, guys.
A friend of mine, and we do some work together in the industry. We don't work in the same company, but we do some aligned work together. She's in communications and advertising. I purchase advertising, so that's kind of how
it's a
that
great
relationship
fit.
started. It was great. But Emily is a young leader in the communications industry, a lot more crowded industry than even the one I'm in.
Right.
And so this is going to be a really cool conversation. Emily, why don't you just start by introducing yourself? Give us the bio, the down low on
Who is
Emily Ward?
Emily Ward.
Should I just read off my LinkedIn profile? Because I spent way too long typing that.
Yeah,
so basically been doing this since like 2014. What I currently do is I'm a general sales manager in Atlanta. So I'm not even in the same state as you guys anymore, which is, sad and happy. But
it sounded a little braggadocious.
Yeah,
and I'm not sure how
it was definitely a weird flex. Okay.
Go ahead.
So basically I have a team of account executives, and our goal is to hit the monetary budget that my company has given us. But my management perspective is a little different than a lot of other people you'll run into. We take a big customer service approach versus let me just push everything onto you and see like what you buy. It doesn't work. If somebody thinks that works, it really doesn't. And so that's pretty much it. Just like a general marketing consultant that leads people to victory. And I just have
a good phrase.
Okay.
I like that.
That's good. So that was a really condensed version of that. Don't let her fool you. Her job's pretty complex.
Okay.
I feel like our advertising is relatively complex, and she manages that plus like a bunch of other people. So talk a little bit about what it's like, because I know some of your story coming through the ranks at Entercom. Talk a little bit about where you started there and how you got to the ATL.
Yeah. So I was an account executive down in Jacksonville, Florida with a different media company. And my boss at that company, got poached by Entercom to go be in Chattanooga and be the market manager and kick butt and take names. And she called me and was like, hey, do you want to come up here? Like, she knew I wasn't really, happy. There wasn't the culture was kind of lack down there at the time. And so she's like, you want to come up here? And I'm like, yeah, let's do it. So, jumped companies, went to Chattanooga. I have a big history of just like not caring. And if it makes sense, professionally, I will literally leave a state and not blink an eye and be like, okay, on to what's bigger and better. And so Chattanooga is a smaller market than Jacksonville, obviously. Chattanooga is like 88 in the ranks of radio life. And Jacksonville, I think at the time was either 45 or 48. So obviously the closer to one, the bigger the market. So it was a drastic change of pace. Chattanooga is not nearly as large, not nearly as many people. So I actually started in Chattanooga as an account executive, and they had Entercom had just acquired Chattanooga from iHeart. So tip of the hat to them.
Some hidden beef there.
Just a little bit.
I worked there for a year when I first got there. A lot of the account executives were trained in the iHeart way, which is, I'm not trying to like bash or anything, but it was just like a lot of package selling. So like here, I'm going to try to fit this like circle shape in a square hole, and so my boss and I really worked hard to kind of retrain and teach, the Entercom products, because they were very similar to the one that I had down in Jacksonville. And so from there, I just kind of got blessed into a management position about like a year and a half later, into like a local sales manager, which is like entry level management. That was awesome. I learned so much so quickly because you have to manage the team that you used to be on the same level as. And so that is different.
That is a difficult task.
It is.
Yeah. Yeah. Because people look at you one day, and then the next day they're like, oh crap, like I come to you for this kind of stuff. And I'm like, yeah. But we all had such a friendly nature anyway. Like nobody in there, at least not in my knowledge, was like vindictive and was like, oh God, I hate Emily. So, but I just try to be open-minded. Like I never like walk into a building and I'm like, I own you, sit down. Like that's just not healthy.
So that's what's wrong with me.
That could be the problem, Mason.
Got it.
This has actually been therapy. I appreciate it.
This is great.
Emily.
I'm learning a lot.
You're probably helping our relationship here. This is
listen, I can mediate.
Nice.
I can mediate pretty well at this point. Oh gosh. I don't know. I think it's just very important to have a very open line of communication, be very transparent, because when you're in sales, it sucks. Like it is so hard sometimes. And then other times it's so fun. And sometimes you get managers who come in and they just put rose glasses on, which is like fine in some situations. But in most of them, I'm like, that is my income you are messing with. Like, what are you talking about? Like, don't tell me it's okay. So,
right.
I don't BS anybody. I don't know if I can cuss in here, and it's probably better if I don't. So I just don't BS anybody. Fine. Perfect. I'll bleep myself out. So transparency, something I did in Jacksonville that I would recommend to anybody is somebody bought all the millennials in Jacksonville emotional intelligence book. It is phenomenal. I don't know if you guys are familiar with it. Are you? Is
that the title of the book, Emotional Intelligence?
Literally, it's the title of the book.
Okay. Yeah. I'm not familiar with it then.
So emotional intelligence, there's another one called Strength Finders, Mason, also the title of the book. And you go online, you take a test, and then based off of the results of the test, like you go to those certain chapters and pages in that book, and it will, kind of tell you a little bit about like, hey, these are your strengths. This is what you should focus on. Like that's nice. Kind of
that's cool. I like that.
You should totally do it. They're very cost effective, and I just keep them on the shelf. And every now and then, if I'm like in a rut or I'm like, what the heck am I doing right this second? Like I'll go back and I'll be like, all right, this is my strength. This is what I need to focus on. Because at first I got taught, because I had some interesting management in Florida. Okay. And just put it at that. And so I got taught like, hey, let's kind of focus on the weaknesses and try to make those better. Whereas Entercom takes hey, these are your strengths. They don't even care. They don't even bring up your weaknesses. They're like, these are your strengths. Let's focus on these, grow these, and like kick tail. And so
the Gary V approach. Gary
sure.
V. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
You don't know who Gary V is. Okay.
No, I do.
Okay.
We can have this conversation. It's fine.
I got you. That's one of his big points is focus on your strengths and double down on them.
So she actually is a Gary V fan and she didn't realize it. Let's back up a little bit and talk about your intro to management there. Because I am curious, being a young manager that was one day working with your peers and then the next day you're over them. It's a little intimidating, right? Because you're like, oh, what about all that crap we used to do when we were working together?
Yeah.
And now you're like, oh, I have to tell them we can't do that.
And that's an interesting point. I know we're going to throw this question at her, but you would think it would be intimidating for the others, but it's actually quite
I would assume it is maybe a little bit.
It's actually quite intimidating, like for you, because I was in a much smaller situation, but I got a promotion over my peers. Mm-hmm. And so talk about that on like a team level, how you dealt with that.
Yeah. Like week one, Emily's over her peers. What was your thought process?
Show up with donuts. Was it bribe with food?
Right.
No, it was really that mentality of like, I literally know what we've been wanting to get done on like our level of being an account executive. And now I have a slightly higher voice. So like, let me help us get there a little bit more. And that's kind of the approach I took to it. Like, y'all can still talk to me. I didn't change alliances or something. Like, I'm still going to be very transparent with you. Like, you know what you're getting. So that should be comforting in itself. And that's what I had to kind of remind myself is like, whenever you're going to be manager, somebody's coming in and taking over a slot and you're like, you know what you're getting. Like, it could be a mixed bag. Like, they could be the devil. Like, you have no idea. And so with them, I'm like, well, hopefully they like me because they know what they're getting. So,
Did you ever feel like you were getting tested, or that there was to see what they could get away with or what they could take advantage of based off of your previous relationship?
Maybe from one, and he was like my closest friend there, and that so he was doing it, but like kind of like wanting to push the buckle, but at the same time I could be like, dude, stop, and he'd be like, okay, you're right, I'm sorry, like, you know. So yeah, I got very lucky because it could have been completely different.
Well, it sounds like, just listening to you talk about that, where a lot of people, when they get put into a management position like that, they take it as a step of power, where it seems like for you it was more like, hey, I'm now your representative. Like I'm taking the next step so that our voices can be heard. And I think that from those peers level, probably helped you to earn some respect with your position, because instead of saying, hey, now I own you, it's, hey, let me be a voice for you to those higher than me.
Yeah, like my big thing, I mean, especially when moving to Atlanta, like the team that I have now, like none of them knew me. Like none of them. I walked in like blind as a bat, like, what's up, guys? You know? And so the two things that, you know, are really my big pushers is, how can I help these people individually make money? Because at the end of the day, that's why they're in sales. That's how they're going to pay everything. How can I help them make money? But then, and so when people are like, oh, you have a minute to talk, I'm like, yes, like I serve you, homie. Like, it's not the other way. Like, it is whatever you need. And they're like, no, that's not true. Like, you know, that's not true. Like, I don't know who else you've been talking to, but like, yeah, I literally got hired to like serve you. So what do you need? Like, you know?
Yeah.
Well, talk a little bit about, because I know it's challenging because I've moved markets before. I had the luxury of knowing the people that I was moving markets into, but I know that it's challenging because you get in a groove, right? In the place that you're in, you know it, you're familiar with it, you know your customers, you're familiar with them. Talk about how it is, because you picked up a couple of times, right, and moved into new markets. How do you adapt without having to just reset every single time?
What a great question.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you. I'll be here all night.
I tend to stick with what I know. Like and I'm going to be so real here. When I first got to Chattanooga as an AE from Jacksonville, I was told, once people got, like, the team that I was working with, like, got comfortable with me, they kind of opened up a little bit, and they were like, dude, you were like a shark when you came in. Like, we didn't feel like we could talk to you. Like, you were just very aggressive. But that's the situation I was in Jacksonville, which is why I was like a little bit like ready to bounce in the most loving way. But like, you know, so
the most loving way, but I needed out of there.
I needed out of there for a minute. I'm sorry. But and so like that feedback right there kind of let me know and taught me in that moment, whether they know it or not, like, okay, I need to be a lot more aware of not bringing my past into my present. Okay, good to know. And so doing that into this bigger role, like having that lesson known already was, I'm sure, very helpful because, you know, I don't want to come off as jaded because it's not these people's fault. And like, they didn't say I was like a, you know, a jerk or anything. They were just saying like, you were very like, I am here to work. I'm not here to make friends, like, you know? And so, which I mean, yes, I'm here to like to work and like, you know, if friends come along the way, then like dope. But at the
friends
same time,
don't
like,
pay
I'm going
the
to
bills.
be more friendly. Yes, but at the same time, like I learned in that moment, I need to be like way more friendly. And so, one of the things that my old manager would tell you is that I tested really low for empathy. So I did a lot of self-awareness discovery on it, if you can imagine that. So I had to do a lot of like.
This is funny because empathy, that's another Gary V buzzword, but we'll just keep
apparently this is Gary V's personal.
Well, I'm just saying.
It's really actually in my other ear telling me what to say right now to push his next book. So.
Perfect. Let's change gears just a little bit. I want to talk about, because when we first met, you were actually in my office, right, with a rep, which didn't work out for that guy, but we won't go there. Bless his heart. He's probably listening right now. We love you, dude. But you actually have to do some like in-person out in the field coaching. I don't know how much of that you're doing now, but at the time you were definitely doing some of that. And a lot of our listeners are in that position where a lot of them are probably the person getting coached in the sales game. Talk a little bit about that and maybe give some advice to people that are doing those in-person visits. Maybe they've got a manager with them. Maybe they're on their own. What's some advice you could lend to them?
Don't be scared. I used to like be so scared when a manager came along, but like, honestly, if it's a good manager, they are there to see you win. So if it's something that I got taught really early on is, tell the manager what role you want them to play. Because some managers will be more assertive. Some managers might sit back a little bit more than you're wanting. So like, I will always set the expectation of like, when I was in AE and I had a manager with me, I'm like, hey, this is the role I want you to play. Like, this is a question that I think you might be able to get an answer out of because I haven't been able to yet. Because sometimes it's just hearing it a different way or hearing it from a different person or a person of power, but like still, that'll get people to get people to answer. And so like, take the nervousness or the interaction, like literally like manipulate it so that you are benefiting from it because you are supposed to be benefiting from it. It's not like, oh, they're coming with you to like write down everything wrong you do. Like, no, like be a sponge, be open, but also set the expectations of what you want that manager to do. You don't want them to hijack it unless you're like, man, I'm feeling extra lazy today. But I mean, if you're feeling extra lazy, you probably should be in sales. So
yeah, and that's a great point as far as the whole mindset there, because a lot of times you do get the idea if a manager's watching me, they're watching every move I make. They're going to be taking notes. As soon as we get in the car, they're going to tell me I did this wrong, I did that wrong, I should have said this different. And I think even from like a management standpoint, that's good to hear, to make sure that you're not coming across that way with those trainees or those reps, to make sure that they're comfortable with like you said, I'm here as an ally. I'm not here to judge you the whole time.
Yeah.
So that's a great point.
It is. And let's build on this conversation because I like where this is going. And let's talk about something that's uncomfortable to talk about, but I think is super important, especially for Matt, the demographic of female listeners that we have on our show. You're in an impressive position for anybody. But we'll just talk about it. You're especially in an impressive position for a woman to be in. I know my industry is most certainly male dominated. The building materials industry is male dominated. I don't know as much about the communications industry, but talk about and maybe give some advice to young ladies that want to take control of their career, right? And they want to take that next step. Maybe they don't know how. Maybe they weren't raised that way. Maybe they're intimidated about entering into a male dominant workforce. What's some advice you would give to them?
How much time do you have?
Without ripping me a new one.
No, not be towards you. Promise. So like half of this answer is going to be a story that I hope somebody takes an answer from. Yeah. I will keep it so brief. I was in school. I got flown to Hollywood to go accept an award for my radio station that I was, working with at the time. The college one went awesome. I was interviewing for this awesome company that I was like, this is my dream company. It's not Entercom, but like we'll get to the Entercom in a minute. Okay, guys. So in my head, I wanted to work for this company. And so some of the top level people from the company was in Hollywood at the exact same conference I was. And I'm like, oh my God, this is it. So I like would take little resources that I knew. I attended a talent institute for radio, which is like, who knew those existed? And I hit up the guy, like, I'm going to be in Hollywood. Can you connect me with someone from this company? He's like, sure. Lesson what? You don't know until you ask. Like, that is my first thing. Like, exactly, oh my gosh, network, please, for love everything network. Okay. So this guy's like, all right, I hit her up. Like I hit this person up and, now they want you to talk to this guy. And I'm like, okay, that's great. I'm lit. Okay. I wore the best outfit, did my hair. I'm like, going to get this job today. And I meet this very high level person in this company, and he's asking me all these questions, and I'm like, I'm nailing this. We were going to do this today. And at the end of it, he's just like, tell you what, if you go on a date with me, I will get you this job.
What?
And he's like, oh my God, it's so worse. Like, it's
What?
fine. It's already bad. So it's fine. So
this is the filtered version of this story, right?
Yeah. Yes. And so obviously I'm sitting in this position, half-brained at going, heck no. And the other half of my brain is, how many of other people has this done that? Like, has this guy done this to?
Yeah.
And they've done it, which is like, you know, people feel pressured to do certain things, and like that's you. And like, I'm sorry if anybody out there in this world got put in that position, because that's so crap. And I look at this guy who was a very high level, and I literally was like, do not ever put my name in your mouth again. I was like, I don't give a insert word here. Who the insert word here you think you are? Like,
Understood.
No. Understood. So, I was like, I've worked my tail off to get here. And he stops, and he literally like tilts his head over, because we were standing up, and he goes, you do have a pretty nice insert word here. And I just looked at him, and I'm like, I never speak to me again. And I just stormed off. And I'm thinking in my head, I do not have this job. I am so screwed. But like, I will be danged if I get a job because I went on a date with this pig. Like,
absolutely.
You know?
Absolutely.
So like, do not let fear of not getting something because of a man stop you. Like, I'm sorry, guys. I'm not trying to.
No, he asked that. I mean,
right, we asked the question. We asked the question for the answer.
Yeah.
Do not think you have to depend on someone, because you know what? To my knowledge, he did not, oh, look, you got unlimited minutes now. Sorry.
Look at that.
Look at that.
I forgot you had a third person, so we get the limitation. Thank you.
Well, that worked.
It was my dial in. Sorry.
Continue. Go ahead.
I'm assuming he did not use my name, because I waited for about 2 weeks and did get the job. And it made it so much better, because I know that like I earned it because of how hard I had worked, not because I was a female, you know?
Yeah.
And so that was its own thing. But anyway, yeah, so definitely that. Like, don't let somebody tell you what you can and can't do. Network your little tiny off, and then like lean on other women in the industry, because I absolutely guarantee you, if you make connections with other women in the industry, they're going to be super stoked that you're trying to be a woman in the industry, and they're going to be like, yes, like, let's do this. So, and I've come into like wonderful male mentees. I need to give them shout outs. Like, I have run into wonderful male mentees, and I've been very lucky. So just, it's all about connections. But it's also knowing like yourself and know your worth. That is like the one thing I teach kids at camp that I volunteer at. I'm like, no, you do not owe these people anything. Like, work hard. So
that's great. And we talk a lot about networking, and I know even in my industry, that's been by far the most valuable tool that I've leveraged is networking. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, everybody's just a bunch of dudes. Like they're like, it's just a bunch of people, right? Yeah. Yeah. And they go home just the same way you go home, and all that pants on the same way, and all that jazz. But they're just a bunch of people. And like, you, in your mind, you elevate these people, like you dehumanize them in certain positions to where you create this fear of people are unapproachable. Right. Right. And if you can get over that, was really good advice. You can get over that and just leverage network. Yeah. So I'm going to go call Ed Milet real quick and see. Yeah.
Let's just see what we can do real quick. No, I love that. And, you know, as you made the statement about the men and you apologized and we were laughing about that, the thought was for me, I've got a 10-year-old daughter. You know, you've got a daughter. Yeah. I want them to know, hey, if you go out and I have that conversation, it's funny how the conversation has changed over the last few years now that, you know, she's 10, very much mouth first young lady, is a negotiator like crazy, you know.
Does she want a sales job?
Right. Well, that's the thing. And I told her, me and my wife were talking about it, like it's gonna get her killed right now, but one day she's going to be able to use that, right? Because everything we tell her to do is a negotiation. But, you know, that mindset of she loves white Jeeps. That's her thing. She wants a white Jeep when she turns 16. And she went from, and it's funny because as we're talking about this and I'm trying to get her in front of the right information, she went from daddy's going to buy me a Jeep to marrying a rich guy that'll buy her a Jeep to saying, no, I'm just going to buy my own Jeep.
Nice.
And that's, I love that. I love that. My like, hey, I don't want you taking daddy's money. You don't need some dude's money. Go get your own money. And so I love these stories of, hey, I didn't, sell out or go the easy route. I put the work in and it paid off.
Oh yeah. And let's marry those two together. Because we both come from a circle where everybody gets married young, right?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of the female depending on the guy to provide for them. There's nothing wrong with that. If that's what you want. It also is okay if you're married young for you both to work at it together. Absolutely. So my wife is a strong, independent woman and doesn't need no man, but she's got one. Thank God.
Right.
So, and she does her own thing. We've moved 3 times. She started a business in every city that we've lived in. And there's days I come home and she made more money than me. And I'm like, all right, well, I guess you're paying for dinner today.
Let's do this. Yeah.
So it's not, they're not mutually exclusive, right? You can still be independent and go out and be strong regardless.
Exactly. And that kind of goes back, and we need to get back to her because here we go.
No, you don't. You're doing great.
Hey, Emily, welcome to the Crush It podcast.
But this goes back to what we talk about so much is don't let anybody else define what success is for you. Mm-hmm. Figure out, what does success mean to you? If success means
I heard a podcast on that once.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Yeah. Exactly.
Is it by Gary Vee?
Well, that's all for Emily on this episode. But no, define what it is for you. Yeah. What does success mean to you? Whether finances or, whatever that means for you, and go after that, whatever it is.
Yeah, that's good. So Emily, give us some closing thoughts. Wrap up. Tell us a little bit about what you've got going on. Like you said, you do some volunteer work. I know you've got some charity stuff going on with the whole the dance thing that we've lovely.
Oh my gosh.
So tell us a little bit about that.
Yes. So I volunteer for Rotary every year for a week long in the summer in like the most humid place in Georgia. But we volunteer with like well over 100 like high school kids that are aged like 14 to 17, 18. And we literally just teach them conflict resolution, which like is another thing a lot more people need to look up. Communication skills, leadership skills, team building. And none of them know each other. And that's what's so crazy and so fun. I went to the same camp when I was little and I was an introvert before I went to that camp. And then I came out of that camp a week later. My parents were like, what have you done to my child? So I have not stopped talking.
It's hard to imagine you as an introvert. So yeah, that must be a good camp. Okay.
Crazy. So yes. And so it made such a big impact on me that I was like, I'm going to go back like every year. And so I don't care if the sky is falling, like I will be at this camp. I don't care. But, because you're able to influence young people from all different walks of life, and teach them the leadership skills like you kind of wish you had been taught a little sooner. Yeah. And that way they're able to go finish out high school and like go into college a little more confident. And so it's beautiful, and it's through Rotary. So like shout out to Rotary. But on the other spectrum of this, we're doing the dance competition through the primary healthcare centers up in North Georgia. And so they actually will have like health clinics and dentists in the school systems up there. And so when parents are, working like very long hour jobs and they're not able to take off, or like they might get their salary penalized, the kid's able to get medical attention at the school for free, which is awesome.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah. And so they've actually been doing COVID vaccines for the kids, like some of the parents, like elderly, stuff like that. So they've been like on it. But as far as charity, that's what I'm doing currently. But I love charity. So if you think of anything I can get involved in, let me know.
That's
awesome.
Yeah. The foundation for Mason Burchett's a really worthy organization.
Well, if you're looking for any type of ROI, I would not recommend that foundation.
Oh, God.
I did have cancer once. Did I ever tell you that?
I've heard.
I have. Emily, thank you so much.
Thank
you guys for having me on this.
And this was a super cool conversation.
It was.
I'm super glad we had it. So Matt, why don't you take us out? Oh, new merch. We have new merchandise on the website. We've got new T-shirts. We have pictures of Paul wearing our T-shirts, which
Paul
is the most
wearing
important
T-shirts.
thing. And he looks better than you and I do in those T-shirts.
It's true. It's true.
What I'm saying.
It's true.
So check out the crushitteam.com, and we've got the T-shirts, the hoodies. We've got move my book. We've got my book on the website. So
buy his book.
Go check
Shameless
out
plug.
.com.
Awesome. Well, thanks for listening in today, guys. Be sure to check us out on all of our social medias. Follow. Listen, one thing I wanted to throw in, we've got a lot of people, I think, that download and listen to the podcast. If you could go a step further and subscribe, that would really help us out. We would greatly appreciate it. That little subscribe button, super easy to hit, and we would appreciate it. But whatever you're doing, whatever you got going on, make sure that you crush it.